Hello and welcome to Embracing the Fight. I am Erica Lamar, your digital creator and host. And if you've been with me since January of 2023, you'll know that Embracing the Fight is about normalizing the conversation surrounding physical and mental health issues and concerns. Why is that important to me? Well, mainly it's because I noticed that when people, are sick, friends, family, otherwise, people don't like to talk about that sort of thing because they feel like they're being judged. So, I'm one of those folks that doesn't really care, about what other people think. I care more about, how people feel in a sense. When I say how you feel, I mean, are you well? Are you happy? Do you know, what's going on in your body if you're not feeling right? And do you feel able enough to speak on those things? Because a lot of people, suffer in silence. And when they do, they tend to implode or they potentially could consider, if not try, suicide. And that's not something that I desire for anyone that I know or anyone out there. I pray that everyone has some form of an outlet. And if you don't, that's why I created Embracing the Fight. That way you have an outlet so you can talk about these things. So if you haven't already, please click like, click subscribe, click share on Embracing the Fight on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and X. The only difference is on Instagram, it is Embracing the Fight _ So what are we going to talk about today? Because, today on Embracing the Fight, we always try to talk about, things that people are dealing with when it concerns their physical and mental health. And something that I've been hearing, quite a bit about lately is drug, interactions. And a lot of things that people, don't consider when it comes to drug interactions is, okay, should I tell each one of my physicians, what it is that I'm taking, how long I've been taking it, or if, say, a physician adds a medication or takes a medication away or changes the dosage, or, they just make any slight little change, how does that, impact me overall? And that's all I really want to talk about today is because a lot of people say, okay, well, I got this medication from the doctor and since it's prescribed, I should take it, as it is written. However, if you are prescribed another medication by another doctor that doesn't quite agree with that medication, it could be very harmful and even potentially fatal. So we don't want that to happen. So what should you do? Well, anytime you're prescribed a medication, make sure you call your primary care doctor and any other specialist that you're seeing to update your medical record. And then when you go to an ER or, anything that may or may not be in your normal network, you need to carry a list of all the drugs that you're taking with the dosages and frequencies. Because what happens is if you tend to stay overnight, once you go to the emergency room, and if that happens, they need to know exactly what you're taking to make sure it doesn't cause you to have another issue other than the one that you're already having if you've gone to the emergency room. Because drugs have a funny way of either sneaking up on you to make you not feel well, or they cause something extremely drastic at, the point of entry. Like, say, for instance, if you are taking, I don't know, a beta blocker. And the beta blocker that you're taking, is causing you to have, digestive issues. Then what you should do is say, okay, call the doctor, explain what you have going on, and then ask them what are some options that you can take rather than continuing to suffer through the medication because your body doesn't always respond well, to certain medications. So it's not like there are so many different, drugs out there that you don't have to force yourself to take a particular drug if it's making you sick. All right, so something else that you need to consider are the foods, activities, drinks, things of that nature that you are doing or intaking when you're taking this medication. Like if you're taking medications that are muscle relaxers or pain relievers, things of that nature. There are certain pieces of equipment, you should not operate if you want to operate it safely. Like you shouldn't be driving if you're taking, painkillers and muscle relaxers. And these are the ones that are prescribed by the doctor. And say, for instance, if you're on blood pressure medication, you don't want to be, drinking a whole lot of grapefruit because that it may heighten the effect the blood pressure medicine. So you don't want to take certain things or eat certain things or do certain things. Like you don't want to drink alcohol if you're already taking some type of tranquilizer or painkiller, because it just makes you really slow down and feel worse. So make sure that whatever drugs you're taking, whatever prescription medications I'm referring to, you're taking, make sure that you read the label. Make sure you know what the active ingredients are and you understand what drugs, what food, and what activities you should avoid while taking those medications. And then on the flip side, there are good foods, good drinks, and good activities to do while taking certain medications. Like, say, for instance, if you're taking cholesterol medication, it is great if you are having a balanced diet and you're exercising, because a balanced diet and exercising could potentially, reduce the need for that cholesterol medication, barring the fact that it could be, a genetic issue that you have. All right. Another thing that you should think about when you are taking different drugs is when to determine if it's an emergency or not, a medical emergency. You know how, like, you see these commercials with all these different drugs that come on there, and then at the end of the commercial starts to tell you, all the life-threatening things that could potentially happen if you start seeing like hives, or if you start sweating profusely, vomiting, fever, things of that nature. It's like, okay, this is a medical emergency, especially if it's on the drug label. It says seek medical help, seek medical, attention if you start to experience or you start to see these things. Please take heed to those type warnings, because those warnings weren't just put there because somebody guessed that those things might happen. Warning labels are created from people who've already been through that situation, and either they were very ill or it was fatal. So if they found that it was fatal, it's like, absolutely put this on the warning label, because if someone sees this, it could potentially save their life. If they see it, right away, and they act and they do something about it, they don't just, oh, well, I got fever, I'm, sweating and I'm tired, I'm just going to lay down. No, don't do that. If it's on the warning label and you're seeing it and you're feeling it, and it's because you just started taking a drug, and say you accidentally drank something or took something while you were taking this drug and you didn't know the interaction, it would have in your body, then yes, seek medical attention. Don't wait, because waiting could be the difference of life and death. Also, when you when it's not a medical emergency, you can always call your doctor's office, ask to speak, to the nurse, and explain, what issues you're having, because you might not always have the opportunity to speak with the doctor, because you could leave a message, for the doctor, but the nurses are going to get your message. They are going to have that discussion with the doctor. Then they'll be the ones that call you back to explain, what you can do, going forward based off of the interaction that your body's had. Now, this is not in the case of an emergency. This is in the case of mild discomfort. You notice, say, stool changes. You notice changes in your urine. You notice slight changes like in your blood pressure. I don't mean like a sustained high blood pressure. I mean a couple of points here or there, but nothing high and nothing, sustained. Say you just notice that you're feeling slightly different, but not so much so that, you are losing consciousness or you're fainting or you're feeling bad. I mean, it's got to be something that makes you feel slightly different and normal. That's when you should reach out. And make sure that when you call your doctor, if You have a moment, write down the things that are causing you the issue. So when you do talk to the nurse, you have a list of the things that are bothering you. You can tell them when you started taking the medication. You can tell them, what other medications you're taking, and you could tell them exactly, how you're feeling at that point. And once you're able to do that, they're able to piece together the puzzle and potentially help you with whatever, side effect or whatever it is that this drug is potentially doing to you. And so there is a period of watch and wait, and then there's a period of when to call the doctor immediately. The watch and wait is, like I said, say for instance, if they put you on a diuretic and you're normally someone who just drinks a lot of water, and you start to feel slightly different, a little faint. That could be because that diuretic is sending out, the potassium in your body, and they may need to replace the potassium for the time that you're taking, this particular diuretic, or they might tell you to increase the electrolytes that you're drinking. There are sometimes subtle things or subtle changes that you can make to help the drug to work properly and not cause any adverse or negative interactions. So, another thing you have to consider is also when you're taking certain prescription medications, there are certain over the counter medications that you cannot take with them. Like, say, for instance, they tell, people who have issues with their liver or with their kidney not to take, a leave. But just imagine if you are in extreme pain and they've given you a muscle relaxer, don't add a layer, of a leave on that, because that is going to cause some major issues with your liver and your kidneys. And you don't want to do that. So even if you've written your list of all your prescription medications, make sure you make a list of the other medications and vitamins, supplements, other things that you're taking at the same time, because those interact with drugs as well. Because think about it, if food interacts with it, you know that over-the-counter medication will interact with it as well. So there's something else that I just have to say, and I know none of my listeners do it, but if you do, hopefully you'll stop, after day, and hopefully you'll get some help considering the situation. But you should not mix drugs for recreation. You'll hear people that will mix cough syrup and other drugs to get this unexplainable high. But you've seen, several people to die, from this. The high might be great, but you don't wake up on this side anymore. And I don't know anybody who really wants to, go like that. Unless, the state of euphoria is just that great, but you don't get to ever come back and tell anybody about it because you're gone. And now, your family's wondering why you did that. And they're just empty. So let's not mix any prescription drugs for recreational use, because when you are prescribed a medication, it is to help get rid of or make a bad situation better. It's not supposed to make a bad situation worse. Because I know a lot of people, say for instance, if a person has like terminal cancer and they say, we give them morphine, you wouldn't necessarily like overdose or try to overdose, on morphine because of how good it may make you feel. That's not, what it's for. It's supposed to help you, feel better. It's not supposed to, take you out. So then another thing that you need to consider doing is when you also make changes, like say, for instance, if you've gone to see your primary doctor and you've seen all your specialists, then you've changed, your medication list. So have you gone to the pharmacy and made sure you've updated everything? Because if you haven't, and say, I don't know, you're out of town and you run out of a certain medication and you run to the nearest pharmacy, and that pharmacy has the old prescription, and then you try to take it and it does something to you. Make sure that you update everything and make sure everything, is the same across the board, because that could be the difference between life and death as well. So the other thing that you should not do is when you're prescribed a medication, don't just stop taking it. Like, I've seen people get antibiotics and they tell you to take these antibiotics for 7 days. And some people take them after 3 days. They're like, "Well, I feel fine." Well, you might feel fine, but there's a certain reason that you need to take, these medications longer, because it has to run whatever issue you have completely out of your system. And if you stop taking it in the middle, that's what causes some of these diseases or viruses and bacteria and issues to become like antibiotic resistant. And then the doctors or the scientists have to come up with something that's stronger, because this new strain of whatever it is that has been created, is not affected by the old medication. They got to come up with something new to make it go away, or to take care of it, or to make it better. So make sure that you take all of whatever they tell you to take when it's, like antibiotics. But say, for instance, something like pain medicine, you don't take all of that just because they prescribe it to you. You take it when you have pain. So you have to use, good judgment, common sense when it comes to certain, medications. Because otherwise, you're going to make yourself sick, or you're going to create something that is very hard to treat if you don't do it properly. Also, if you are taking a drug that manages a chronic illness, make sure that you try to take it same time every day if possible. Like, for instance, with my levothyroxine, I make sure I wake myself up every morning at 5 a.m. I have an alarm set. Now my body just kind of wakes up, when I take it, because it gives, it's basically giving me the right amount of levothyroxine or thyroid, like hormone, synthetic thyroid hormone, into my body as if my thyroid was functioning regularly. So it's getting at the same time every day, and it's a slow release. So it's releasing all day long. So I don't have highs and lows. And then I don't eat anything, at 5 a.m. So the medicine interacts with my body, like it should. Now, before that, I can tell you, I was eating, I was dating at different times, I was doing all kinds of stuff. And then I noticed, I said, I just don't feel right. But now I feel pretty normal. I feel, really good. And I think it's because I just said, finally, let me just go ahead and take it same time every day on an empty stomach. And now my body, is really truly responding and feeling so much better. Also, when you notice that, say, your body is going through life changes, like if you're navigating, say, post surgical care, menopause, mental health, things of that nature, the medications that you take may not be lifelong. They may be, just for a certain period of time. If that is the case, you have to pay strict attention to what you should do and what you shouldn't do, because even though it's for a short period of time, it's designated for that time to deal with that specific thing. And if you don't take the medication like you should, then it could prolong the symptoms or prolong, the issues that you have. So basically, your body communicates. We just truly have to listen to it. Because if you're taking a medication and say you're taking something for a headache, but then your gastrointestinal system is evacuating everything and it feels like your body's on fire, then 9 times out of 10, that headache medication is not designed for you. There's something else that you should try, or there's something else that's potentially going on. And when it happens, don't just shrug it off. You have to say something, to your primary care physician first, to say, I took this medication and this is what happened. This is what my body did. Don't just not pay any attention and say, oh, I'm just not going to take that anymore, because there may be some ingredient that's in that medication that is causing you to not be well. You may be allergic to it. Who knows? But you never know if you never say anything. So it's very important to listen to your body and ask questions to figure out, what, can I change? What can I eat? What can I drink? What activities can I do to make sure that these drugs are acting effectively to tackle whatever issue it is that I'm dealing with? Because this is very serious. Like I said, it could be between life and it could be between death. But then let's think about it even more when you're thinking about, your kids. Your kids depend on you to give them the right medication, the right dosage, and they believe that you'll give them the right food to eat and the right things to drink, and they think that you're monitoring their symptoms to make sure that they're being well taken care of, because they don't know anything about drug interactions. And the choices you make could truly impact their lives. Let's also think about folks who are caregivers for their loved ones, or say you have, aging parents. When they take certain medications and you start like hearing in your head the different things that they're saying, stop looking at it as a complaint. Because behind every complaint, there is a true issue. There's some pain point that's causing them to say what they're saying. Like, say, for instance, if you have parents that are taking medications for, say, arthritis. Well, if they take it and they're like, oh, my stomach is killing me, my back is killing me, but the arthritis, say maybe it was for the knees or for the elbows or the shoulder, but now they got something else that's going on, then it could potentially be causing them a serious, serious issue that you need to look into. Don't just say, oh, it's because they're old and they're hurting. No, just because you're aging does not mean that you should be in pain. You don't have to be in pain. Now, of course, you got some folks that you have to, do pain management and you have to take medications to do it. But let's just talk about those that don't, who just suffer from, say, arthritis, or they had bone spurs, or they had things of the nature and they're taking medication, but it's impacting another system in their body. We have to be vigilant, the ones who are caring for the elderly, to say, okay, they're complaining about this, let me call the doctor. Don't make them wait. Because sometimes, especially like people in the silent generation and baby boomers, they tend to not tell you, what's wrong. They'll tend to try to tough it out and fight it out. And then once they do tell you and you take them and, it's fixed and like lickety split, then they're like, dang, I should have said something earlier. But 9 times out of 10, they don't say anything because you don't act, or because you can act like you're annoyed, or you shrug it off as them, complaining. And that's not the case. When a person is hurting, they're hurting. And if you are their caregiver or you're their child, you should listen and you should act right away, because you only get one set of parents or one set of grandparents, and the people that you truly love, when they need you, you should be there. Make sure that you're reading what medications they're taking. Make sure that you understand and know, what's new and what's not. If you see expired medication, throw it, dispose of it. I'm not saying throw it down the sink or the toilet or anything like that. You can take it to different pharmacies. They have these receptacles like inside of CVS that say expired medication. You can pour, that stuff there. That way it's disposed of properly. It doesn't get back into the water, into the streams, and people drinking all this stuff. It goes where it's supposed to go. But just make sure you know what they're taking. You are paying attention to what they're eating. You are encouraging them to exercise. Go for a walk, with them. Just sit down and talk and find out, exactly how they're feeling. And then you'll be able to see that if their medication changes and you notice a change in them, then you'll be able to act sooner, and you won't have to worry about, a drug potentially causing them to, have a fall or have a stroke or something like that, because you're truly paying attention, because you truly love these people that you're caring for. So the last thing really that I really want you all to know, that this episode is educational purposes only. I am not a medical professional. I just care about people and our health. Because once I started, not being well when I had cancer, this is my second time, that I had cancer, and now I'm cancer free. But it's like, the more I hear people talk about the different things that they're feeling and how they're not well, or how they're taking all this medication, or they want to try natural methods, they want to do all this different stuff, I think it's important that we talk about these things so we can heal, one life at a time. All right. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to watch this episode of Embracing the Fight, Drug Interactions. Y'all, let's be diligent. let's continue to help one another and really be our brother's keeper. Because when you see a person taking a medication, or say, for instance, if you see a person having a medical event or an episode, don't just stand by. Try to help them, because what happens when it's you? You want someone to help you, wouldn't you? All right. So, as always, I want you all to have an absolutely amazing day.